Hi, I'm Nicole Chen, and I am a Taiwanese-American children's book author. I write books for kids that feature Taiwanese or Asian American characters like me. One of my books is this one, How We Say I Love You. I'm also a parent to a 9-year-old. She loves to read, and reading is something that we do a lot together, especially at night before bed. So what I'm going to do in this talk is I'm going to offer you some tips that might help you and your child enjoy reading together to really make reading a joy and not a chore. First, why is reading together so important and helpful in helping your kids fall in love with books? So reading together makes it a really nice bonding moment between you and your children, and it helps make the feeling toward books really positive. And yes, reading together is a little extra work for you as your parent, but if fostering a love of reading for your kids is important to you, then we do have to put that effort in also. And just 15 minutes before bed will be well worth it as a nice slow down moment for a busy day. I personally prefer to read at night with my child. It's a moment when young kids really need a little help to slow down, and they need some help getting ready to rest. It's also a moment to be with them and give them a chance to share parts of their day if they want to. But if sometimes they're so tired and they won't, that's totally okay too. I read with my daughter when we're both in our pajamas already, when our teeth have been brushed already, and when I can turn off the light and walk out the door after we're done. Although I often will just lie with her for a few minutes before I sneak out after she's fallen asleep. So if you have more than one child, one tip is to take turns with each child for different nights. Or you can have each caregiver read with each child and then swap the next night. This is really nice because it makes each night really special for the one kid, because they get to choose the books and they get that one-on-one time with you as a parent. And then for older children, if only one parent is in charge of the nighttime routine, taking turns can foster independent reading, where they have to read on their own for the nights you're with your other kid. Or if your kids are of similar enough ages, you can read the same book to them at the same time, but have the kids take turns each night and who gets to pick. That way they get their own choices, but they also get to spend time. And now I'm going to offer some practical tips for really successful read-alouds. So first is to take the time to observe and discuss the pictures. I think sometimes we forget as parents that while we're reading the words, the kids are actually looking at the pictures. So after we read the words, I think it's nice to take a pause and look at the pictures and discuss them with our kids. This really works for graphic novels as well, which is a good bridge format into the longer chapter books that our kids might read. Another tip is to make reading a game. My daughter used to love this book called Dream Animals, the picture book, and we started to play a game. What have you not noticed before? We would take turns pointing out something on each spread that we hadn't seen before. So for example, I've never noticed that the shadow is in the shape of a moon. I've never noticed that this person's eye is blinking. And then we would go to the next page. And so this builds observation skills and also invites conversation between you and your child. In How We Say I Love You, the illustrator, Lenny Wen, has actually drawn little hidden hearts on every page. And kids love looking for the hearts, and they love to show adults where the hearts are. And I could see this also easily becoming a custom hide-and-seek game that can help the child and the adult enjoy more aspects of the book together. So another tip is to take turns reading. So for that same book that I mentioned before that my daughter loved, called Dream Animals, she started to memorize the words and memorize certain lines. And so we'd actually start reading together, where I would read a line and then she would read the one that she memorized. And so this is fine. She's not actually reading the words, but she's feeling that sense of pride, and she's feeling proud that she is reading. And I think this counts too, and it fosters confidence, and again, it fosters that interactivity with the parents. For some books though, especially if they're a bit long or if they have harder words, it's totally okay if you are the one that's reading out loud. I think what's important here is that the kid is next to you and you are both engaged in the same story, not that they're necessarily following each word and studying, right? This moment should be sweet and comfortable. There are benefits beyond these bonding moments at night to reading together as well. So reading together will also help you and your child have something to talk about during the day when you're not reading. So for example, I try to discuss the characters or a particular story with my child by bringing out the characters into our daily conversation. So for How We Say I Love You, for example, You can point out how you and your child are expressing your love for each other throughout the day. For example, if your child gives you a drawing that they made, you can say, "Oh, thank you so much for this drawing. This is just like how Hannah shows her love to her family." And then that will remind your child of the story that you've just read together and of that bonding moment that you just had. So one last note, because it's so important for this bonding reading together moment to be one that our kids really enjoy, we should be careful to not push too much on the reading skill. For example, I'd like my child to read longer format, non-graphic books as well as the graphic books that she loves. So at night, we read together these longer chapter books where she cuddles next to me and she listens while I read out loud. I don't force her to read to me, but I do know that she's following along because she likes to point out my mistakes. And then she's also hearing new words and building her vocabulary through just listening also. So just don't push too much on the skill and really make sure that this moment feels really special and bonding. So thank you so much for listening to my perspective and experiences as both a children's book author and as a parent. And I hope you give How We Say Love You a chance for the next time you read together with your child. Good luck in your journey to foster a love of stories and books in your children. And I hope you enjoy the time bonding with your child through reading books.